Oh, it's official now. Welcome to a special Sunday edition of Inside the Zone alongside Justin Kinney of Optimal Performance Sports. I'm Glenn Marini. Why are we here on a Sunday? Well, the sectional draw, as many of you know, came out courtesy of the IHSAA, and that is what we are going to break down here on this special edition. Justin, I want to start off in 6A. 5A and 6A have a bye. 6A gets a little more intrigue this year with Snyder moving up after having won a 5A state title. You're talking about in 6A Sectional 2, Snyder versus Elkhart in round 1 with Carroll versus Northrop. We saw Carroll Northrop last week in week 8. That was 52-0. I don't imagine a whole lot will change from now until then. But let's talk about the Snyder Elkhart game because that's a real game for Snyder. Like, you have to seriously be concerned. I was thinking, I'm pretty sure Elkhart's good this year. I looked it up; they're very good. They're 7-1. They've beaten Penn and they've beaten Mishawaka Marion. What do you think Snyder's going to have to do in this game, and how do you see this draw playing out?
Well, since consolidation and Elkhart has become the school in that city, it's been a program on the rise, and it's proven it in the last couple of years, and it continues to be another really good team in the region. And it's a tough draw because not only does Snyder have to play Elkhart, they have to go to Elkhart. And I know so many people around here are saying, well, we can't wait till Snyder Carroll round 2. Snyder's got to take care of business first on the road to even have a chance to play Carroll. So when you look at the draw and maybe winners or losers, yeah, look at Snyder and say definite loser because they have a tough one right out the gate.
Yeah, and when you look at Carroll, obviously they beat Northrop pretty handily this past week, 52-0. Is this a game where you're going to have a bye week and then you're going to be heavily favored in this game? How do you make sure that you stay sharp if you're the Carroll Chargers, knowing that you probably do have an eye on the scoreboard, seeing who wins between that Elkhart and Snyder game?
Well, that's the key for Coach Doug Dinan and the coaching staff is to keep his team focused on the task at hand, going over to Spoler and playing Northrop. It's very difficult to play a team twice in the same season, especially at the high school level after a rout and you feel, okay, this is going to be easy. If for Carroll, it's just go out, play the way you're capable of, don't make any mistakes, get out of there healthy, and prepare for the winner of Snyder and Elkhart. So the message will surely be don't overlook Northrop because that offense in particular can put up some points. But through the first game between these two teams, that Carroll defense did a really good job limiting what the Bruins could do.
Let's take a look at 6A Sectional 4. You got Fishers and Noblesville on the top half of the bracket, Hamilton Southeastern at Homestead on the bottom half. HSE comes in ranked 8th in the 6A poll. Homestead, we saw them in the first 2 weeks of the season. They didn't fare as well as they would have liked against a couple of Indy area teams in Carmel and Noblesville. Hamilton Southeastern beat Noblesville, who beat Homestead 49-6. So by the transitive properties of high school football, this is going to be a tough row to hoe if you're the Homestead Spartans, although they are getting healthy at the right time.
Yeah, they are. This has been a draw. Well, not necessarily a draw, but even after the sectional announcements with the field, and you felt bad for Homestead having to go south. And you look at it this way now, and you say, okay, record-wise, oh, maybe Homestead has a shot, but the schedules that Fishers and Noblesville and HSE plays, you mentioned Noblesville with that big win over Homestead. That was just one of 2 wins they've had all season long. Is Homestead's up against it. Yes, they get it at home and they get HSE at home, but Homestead has been so inconsistent this year, last year. It's just we see signs of what their potential is. It's just not consistent. And we say maybe if Homestead could get right at the right time and play their best football in sectional time, maybe they can win a game or two, but you just don't know with this Homestead team. And it's been the case kind of the last couple of years. They knock off both division winners last year, but don't factor in the SAC championship. And then this year, 4-4, it's just as soon as you feel like they've gotten the right direction, they hit a wall. But I think getting Michael White back is huge. Getting healthy is huge. It's just, it's a tough draw no matter how you draw it up for Homestead, considering they're in this field with 3 indie teams.
When you take a look at 5A Sectional 11, it feels weird. I kept thinking I was missing a 5A bracket this year because they're just
I know.
Snyder moving up. I was like, there's just not a lot of – there's 2 5A teams in our area, really.
Yeah.
At 5A Sectional 11, Goshen is at Warsaw. Concord number one in 5A, travels to Chambers Field to take on a Northside team that's won 4 of their last 5, scored 42 last week in a win at Wayne. Let's talk about Goshen and Warsaw. I mean, this was a 56-7 game in week 3 that Warsaw won.
Right.
Conceivably, the Tigers are a heavy favorite in that one. So I want to talk about the Northside Concord game because Northside has played some good competition. You look at where Lawrence North is at this point in the season. Throw out the SAC stuff. They competed with a solid Lawrence North team. So they're not when they play quality football teams that are their size or bigger, they've played pretty well. What's going to be the key for Northside putting up a fight and maybe putting a scare in these Minutemen and sending them back to the 574 area code with a loss on the first round of 5A playoff action?
Well, you knew this draw with the 4 teams. You have a undefeated team, you have a winless team, and then we have our 2 area squads, both 5 and 3, in Northside and Warsaw. And Warsaw gets the favorable draw, and Northside doesn't. Now, the benefit is for North, they don't have to make the drive, so they get this game at home. A Concord coming in. You feel like the way Northside has been playing, as you mentioned, 4 of 5. If they can get a week 9 win, that would help even more. But I think after what we saw Friday night out of Northside and just the dominance they displayed over a Wayne team that we thought and probably still think could be a factor in sectional 19, when you look at how Northside played on Friday, you look at talking about teams that are peaking at the right time. Are the Legends doing that? Tristan Newsome, in my opinion, the second best all-around quarterback in the SAC. And then you have Malik Moore. You have Jamari Pearson. You have talent all over the field. I think it's a test for Concord. They have a challenging schedule, but maybe they haven't played a team with the athletes like Northside. But the factor is in this game, this isn't a lumbering, slow run between the tackles like Concord team. This is an athletic Concord squad with D1 athletes. So that's the challenge that they're going to present with Northside. This is not a difference in schemes or anything like that. Concord is going to be able to come in and keep up and play with the athletes of Northside.
Let's jump to 5A Sectional 19. These are all local teams here. Southside is at East Noble. Leo's at DeKalb. Columbia City at Bishop Dwenger. New Haven at Wayne. We've seen Southside in the past when they beat Leo a few years ago. I guess that was more than a few years ago, but I'm getting older, so it just seems like it was the other day. East Noble has shown, obvious dominance throughout the season. But in that game right below them, Leo DeKalb, those 2 teams are going to play in week 9. I don't know how close the coaches are going to play their cards to their vest in this one. But when you take a look at Leo DeKalb, we saw Caden Hinkle do his thing. I mean, I guess Leo's going to be the favorite, but DeKalb has some firepower, and we saw it last week for sure.
Yeah, DeKalb, when they play the right teams, can really put on a show. As you mentioned, Caden Hinkle. And taking advantage of that matchup over Belmont. You feel like Leo is that team to watch in this sectional because they feel like they owe East Noble and they definitely owe Columbia City. But after Southside's win last week against Bishop Luers, you look at that game at East Noble and say, okay, the Knights better be ready. And then conversely, Wayne, they kind of have a favorable draw in which they'll get New Haven and then potentially either Columbia City or Bishop Dwenger. So the draw didn't really give anybody an advantage. There's not somebody that's on the beneficial side of the bracket and then load up another side. It's pretty evenly matched. But I think that Columbia City Bishop Dwenger game is that first round matchup to circle because you feel good if you're Columbia City, particularly after last week. And if you're Bishop Dwenger, you say, okay, we can hit reset and focus on Class 4A and a competitive sectional, but maybe we can put things together. But they have a challenge right out of the gate.
Yeah, that'll probably be our highlight zone game of the week. That first Friday of the postseason, Columbia City at Dwenger could be a statement win for Brett Fox. I know he probably hates this, but they're probably the favorite in that one. Like he enjoys the underdog, but the way Dwenger has not scored double digits in points the last 2 weeks. Now maybe they do in week 9, and maybe they get healthy at the quarterback position, and that turns out to be a moot point. But right now, I mean, man. You saw Columbia City and what they did last week against Leo when all the chips were down. Because of the path, like who is the favorite to win this sectional? Could it be Columbia City?
Well, I think it comes down to quarterback play in this sectional, and not necessarily the guy that's going to throw for 300 yards for 3 straight weeks and win it. I think it's the guy that's going to limit mistakes and make a couple big throws. We saw Grayson Bradbury make a huge throw on the final play of the game for Columbia City to beat Leo. We also saw Grayson Escara make some throws early in that game. And we look at East Noble. Riley Biddle has shown signs that he can sling it when need to. You look at Wayne. As Harold Mack get more comfortable? You mentioned Bishop DeWanger. Is it Henry Jordan? Are they going to have to go with O'Keefe for the duration because of Jordan's injury? I think it all depends on whose quarterback over the course of 3 weeks can minimize mistakes and hit a couple big plays. And there's no dynamite. There's no Jimmy Sullivan in this sectional, but there are a lot of quarterbacks that are capable of making you pay if they can put it together at the right time. So I really think it's the team whose quarterback gets hot in this one, maybe makes a key throw late, avoids a turnover or two, something like that, because that's how tight I think this sectional field is.
I just want to touch on 4A sectional 20 real quickly because I looked at the bracket and it is a favorable pairing for Huntington North. They host 0-8 Frankfort, and then they would take on Marion in the second round, who's 4-4. Marion's got a bye. Huntington North is 5-3. Could very well be 6-3 after playing New Haven in week 9. I mean, you get the Vikings in a championship game, anything goes, right? Even with Logansport right? And Culver on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, you got Logansport, Culver, and Lebanon all on the bottom side of the bracket. Lebanon. We talk about teams that maybe benefited from the draw. That's Huntington North, as you mentioned. You to face a winless team, and then you got a beatable Marion squad. So it's been a really, really fun year for Huntington North. I talked to the coaches there a couple of weeks back, and they said, being able to go to the spread that they've done with Mike Eschbach, and you kind of say, well, a spread at Huntington North, that doesn't really fit. But what it does is it gets kids excited instead of just running between the tackles and being that team that, is very, very vanilla offensively, and they're not winning games. That's not going to bring kids out. But you go to a spread, you're allowing kids to work in space. The quarterback has put up greater numbers. The wide receivers are having fun. That gets more kids out. And winning helps that as well. Huntington North has been able to do that this season as well. So whatever happens, this sectional has been a successful season, in my opinion, for Huntington North. But the way the draw lays out, as you mentioned, it could be a Vikings team that's playing for a sectional championship in a couple weeks.
It seems nuts, but Huntington North, if they win the games that they're going to be favored for from here on out, they could have 8 wins on the season and be playing in a sectional championship game. I mean, that is one heck of a turnaround from last year. So kudos to
a team that won 1 game last year. How about that?
Yeah, Mike Eschbach has done a heck of a job. He would have to be on your short list for coaches of the year in Northeast Indiana. Let's take a look at 3A sectional 26. We get the rematch of Lakeland at Garrett. You've got Woodland versus Tippecanoe Valley. West Noble travels to Angola. Concordia travels to Fairfield. I want to touch on that Garrett-Lakeland game because we saw Lakeland's best early in the season. They faltered a bit towards the end, whereas Garrett just seems to get stronger and stronger and more confident and more confident. Is this a case where you look at the sectional and see Garrett on one side, West Noble on the other side, and you can probably... I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but you could probably say those are the two teams to beat, and that would likely be your sectional champion. Is that your first reaction when you see this bracket, or do you see some teams that could maybe upset the apple cart here?
I think Tippecanoe Valley could be a threat in this one. I think that's a very solid team. Woodland has to go there to open the postseason, which is a tough draw for Woodland with their 5 straight wins, but it's another team that I think, regardless of what happens in the postseason, has been a successful year 1 for Brock Rohrbacher. That Garrett-Lakeland game, round 1 for them. Lakeland dug themselves a hole. Garrett was a large part of that. And then once Lakeland really started opening up and going tempo and getting the ball vertically, they were able to score. The problem was they couldn't stop Garrett from scoring. Same thing against Fairfield on Friday. Lakeland was able to put up points. They just couldn't stop Fairfield. So I think that's the problem with Lakeland is defensively, can they get enough stops against a quality team in the playoffs? And then West Noble, Garrett, we saw the round 1 between those two. Garrett did a tremendous job stopping the run for West Noble. Can West Noble find some other ways to either move the ball vertically or get some more opportunities for Seth Pruitt in that run game? Who knows? But West Noble's got to take care of business first. They have the beneficial side of the bracket, I feel. But the way Garrett is playing, it's tough to consider them maybe as a team to get knocked off in those first 2 rounds. But again, don't sleep on Tippecanoe Valley.
I gave you an opportunity to reference Hawk Hasselman. I feel like we do it every week just because it's the number one name in Northeast Indiana, especially if you're a quarterback. 3A sectional 28, Norwell will travel to Bishop Luers, Jay County, battles Belmont, Heritage, Delta, and then Oak Hill, Mississinawa. Norwell Luers is an interesting first round matchup because we just saw Luers lose in the Clash on Calhoun by 1 point on a blocked PAT. But this is a team in Luers' history, and whether it's 3A or 2A, whenever they get to the postseason, it feels like we've got a different team when it comes to the Knights. How do you see this one playing out? And on the bottom half, Oak Hill, Mississinawa are both pretty good quality teams, but so is Delta, and Heritage has to go there to Delta
Yeah.
in week one.
Yeah, it's a tough draw for Heritage. You have to go down to Delaware County and take on Delta, and then you await the winner of Oak Hill, Mississinawa. Mississinawa is one of the best defenses in the entire state. Went through the first half of the year without giving up a single point. They're a dominant team down in Grant County. You look at Luers, and traditionally we say, yeah, this is when it gets right. But remember, they're up a class now in 3A. So instead of playing the likes of Manchester and Cherubusco and Bluffton, all due respect, you're playing a potential Heritage Delta Mississinawa. So it does get more challenging. And the fact of the matter is that Bishop Luers offense, if you can stop Darier Williams in the run game, there's not a lot there for Bishop Luers. And we're further enough into the season where it says you are who you are. And Bishop Luers is not a dynamic offensive team. That's just not who they are this year. So does it leave the door open for a team in that bottom half of that sectional to beat them? Absolutely. And I think Mississinawa could potentially beat that team.
2A sectional 35, Cherubusco at Manchester, Adams Central at Bluffton, East Side at Whitco, Prairie Heights at Central Noble. The rematch of Adams Central at Bluffton, obviously it won't be at Minnick Field, so it'll be at Bluffton, which is certainly doesn't hurt the Tigers' chances. We saw Adams Central kind of take control of that game fairly early in week 8 to clinch the ACAC championship. If you're the Tigers, what do you do different? What do you try to do differently in week 10 that you couldn't do in week 8 against Adams Central to try and upset Adams Central? And conversely, if you're Adams Central, what kind of wrinkles do you put in? Or do you just say, hey, man, this is what we do. Let's go out and do it.
And that's usually what Adams Central is, right? Everybody knows what they're going to do, and you just can't stop it. But, you look at round one with Bluffton and Adams Central, and Bluffton was able to score a couple touchdowns, but they just weren't able to get stops. And that's the big thing. It's a crucial thing. It sounds easy, but it's not. If you can limit Adams Central, if you can take them off schedule, put them into second and long, third and long, then it forces them off their script. But it's easier said than done. And I think we look at Bluffton and we see all the playmakers they have with AJ Strevler and Cooper Craig and Kamel Moore and Axton Best, but it's up front where you really look at Bluffton and they're just not there yet. And could they be there next year potentially with only 2 seniors that see considerable playing time? Maybe, but that is the big deficiency for me with Bluffton. We saw it against Heritage. We saw against Adams Central on both sides of the football. It's just not a team that's able to win at the point of attack against the upper echelon teams in its league. And unfortunately, it drew one of those in Adams Central in the first round.
I think the team that nobody's really talking about is in the bottom half of the bracket with Eastside, with a healthy quarterback, and they get 0-8 Whitco in the first round. They would play the winner of Prairie Heights Central Noble, which conceivably would be Prairie Heights because they beat Central Noble 42-20 in week 4. And Eastside has a little bit of a postseason pedigree. Like, they know what it takes to win in October and in November at Eastside, and they could find themselves in a sectional championship game. I don't want to count out Cherubusco, or actually Manchester's had a nice season, but I think Eastside may be a team to keep an eye on if you're watching that sectional.
Definitely a team that should be able to get to that sectional championship game. Noah Dove, the running back, and Lincoln Carter at quarterback that can run it and throw it. It's a solid offense. They've gotten healthy and continue to get healthier. Yeah, they got a good draw, Eastside.
I want to touch on the 1A games real quick because in sectional 43, we got Blackhawk Christian for the first time in school history. And they drew 6-2 North Miami, a team that's for a small school, generally pretty good at football. And then you got Southwood 0-8 at Triton and Fremont at Northfield. Southern Wells had a bye in that sectional. For Blackhawk Christian, what can they take away from this experience? I mean, these guys, you say, oh, I've been there, done that. These guys have never been there.
Right.
So how do you get them ready for their first postseason and try to, make some noise and get an upset if you're the Bennetts and the Blackhawk Christian Braves?
I was hoping Blackhawk Christian would draw Southern Wells. I think that would be an interesting game for both programs. But it's all about the experience. I think last year was all about building in year one. Now year two, you're in the playoffs for the first time. It's just all about the experience and gaining experience at this level. And unfortunately, you draw North Miami, which is a really solid 1A team. But it's going to be a different experience for Blackhawk Christian, but it'll be another box checked as they continue to build that program.
Do you think I'm looking at now 1A sectional 44, not a lot of local teams, but South Adams, based on Sagarin rating, is second out of the 8. They're 3-5 this season, but they get 2-6 Union City, and then the winner of Tri and Westdale, which isn't too scary in the second round.
Right?
Could they make a run to the sectional championship game if you're Grant Mosier and company?
Not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, you look at the top two teams in that sectional, you feel play in the first round with Monroe Central and Madison Grant. So one of those is going to be out, and you still won't see either one of them until the sectional championship. So if South Adams can take care of business round one, they should be able to against Union City. Then it's a different challenge then between Tri and Westdale. But you hope that South Adams, you take a loss last Friday at home. Can they bounce back in week 9 and maybe regain some momentum, because they do have a favorable draw if they can put some things together. But that's kind of been the problem with South Adams, right? Consistency this season, and they'll have to be consistent, win a couple games in a row to set up a potential matchup with probably Madison Grant. But Monroe Central, they have history, Monroe Central and South Adams, so you never know.
Finally, to wrap this up, what was your biggest takeaway when you collected all the brackets and looked through it? Like, what was the first thing that came to your mind when you saw all the pairings come out?
I think I always root for big games spread across the 3 weeks of sectional play. I don't want anything loaded. I know so many people want to be, see the sectional, whatever. I don't want every big game being a sectional final. And that's just selfishly for me. I want to spread out. So we have a couple games in week 1 of sectionals, so potentially sectional semifinals that'll be exciting, and some sectional championship games that could come to fruition too. So I like to spread out the big matchups. I don't need 1 versus 2 in the sectional final. I know you don't want to either, because how the heck are you going to cover everything when we have big, huge matchups all over? So spread the love. That's what we saw with the ping pong balls again this year. I love it.
All right. He is Justin Kinney. I'm Glenn Marini, and we'll be back Monday for some Inside the Zone as we break down week 9.